This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Riley Smith.
Hello and welcome into Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. Today is Wednesday, December 31st of 2025, the last day of the calendar year, and we are so glad you can join us for today's show. In today's episode, I'll be talking with Emerine of Helena for an update on their latest product offerings. We'll also have a check of the closing markets with Kenan Layden of agmarket.net. But first, here's that conversation again with Emerine. And there's a lot of things to be looking at: soil fertility and plant productivity. What types of tools and programs does Helena use to measure those and get that data back to farmers?
Sure. So we're really big on advocating for our customers to soil test and plant tissue test. And one of the things that we've been focusing on is looking at all of our soil test data from 24, trying to determine what are the biggest issues that are showing up, nutrients that are deficient in the soil, and then tying that to what are we seeing showing up deficient in the plant in season, to kind of guide our fertility program going into 26.
So then when we look at that data and kind of use that to make better decisions, how does Helena use that data to help those growers make those decisions and then manage, like you mentioned, the rising cost of inputs? That is something that every farmer has to deal with.
Absolutely. So just to give you a little bit of a flavor for it, so in 24 we had over 600,000 soil samples we pulled across the country, and the most deficient nutrients, kind of the top four, were sulfur, zinc, boron, and manganese, followed by potassium and phosphorus. So the way we use that and what we're seeing as we've pulled off these high yields the last few years is that micronutrients are starting to show up as a bigger issue. A lot of our growers are doing a pretty good job of managing their basics, their P and their K. So we're advocating, let's use this data going into 26. Phosphorus fertilizer is very high. If you've been fertilizing phosphorus pretty regularly over the last few years, maybe that's a place you can cut. But let's think about what fertilizers are going to give us the biggest return on investment.
You mentioned those micronutrients. How do those impact the yield potential, and I guess what level of impact do they have on that yield potential, and then how can they be integrated into a fertility program?
Great question. So, if they're deficient, you can lose anywhere from 2 to 5 or 6 bushel if they're not where they need to be. The beauty about integrating them in a program is a lot of these micronutrients, with the exception of zinc, but like boron, speaking specifically about boron, are needed at reproduction. So you may not want to spend a lot of money on some of these micros way early in the season, but think about incorporating them with your fungicide application or with your last herbicide application, and that's a really good way to manage them.
And then when it comes to the field data analysis, back to that a little bit, what do growers need to know in order to be successful next season? What data do they need to look at, and how do they apply that to their farm?
Sure. So we're really big, to me, make sure you have an up-to-date soil sample. Look at what's showing up as deficient in the soil. If you have plant tissue data, incorporate that as well, because that gives you the other side of the story. And go to someone you trust to help come up with a game plan based off that.
And speaking of going to someone you trust, what kind of technology has been developed at Helena to harness and improve the nutrient efficiency and ROI for producers?
Well, for us, we're really big on capturing the soil and tissue data as well as yield data. And then we can go through and analyze and help customers determine what nutrients are impacting yield the most on their farm.
Thanks again to Emerine of Helena for joining us on today's show. We'll go ahead now and take a look at the closing markets with Kenan Layden of agmarket.net. Kenan, it is the last day of the calendar year. What's been going on in the grains today?
Yeah, grains had negative price action today. The downside leader was soybeans. Brazil continues to have good weather. The market may be starting to think that China is only going to fulfill its 12 million metric ton obligation and not actually import any more than that. Export pace, if you take away the China, it has been slow. So there is some concerns there with the market action. Managed Money has also, from the latest CFTC reports, shown that were still long a lot of positions. So they are exiting those positions with the poor export numbers, and maybe this new idea that China is not going to buy anymore could be placing pressure on the market. Corn was steady. It continues to trade within its range from that about a 434, 435 to the highs right there over 450. Wheat was slightly pressured today. Argentina's wheat crop continues to increase. So all in all, pretty negative day in the grains.
And then as we look at the end of the year, we're looking at South America a lot when it comes to the weather conditions down there. And the markets will really be shifting to that as the critical yield period starts to happen, especially in Brazil. Could add quite a bit of volatility as we head into 2026, right?
Yeah, possibly. So far, so good. Brazil's had really good weather, from what I understand. So, not much coming out of that way yet. Was some talk of some dryness in Argentina a couple weeks ago, but market doesn't seem to think or take into account that that's big of enough of a story. So, as for now, weather's good. Forecasts probably don't look too threatening the way the market's trading.
And then as we look at the livestock side of the ag marketplace, how did cattle and hogs trade today?
Yeah, cattle were up a bit and hogs closed down slightly today. Cash has been pretty steady in the cattle over the last week with this holiday trade, and smaller sales, lack of sales, fundamentals, as everyone talks about, continue to be strong going into 2026. So we'll have to pay attention to what cash does there. The cattle charts did fill the gap that they left, so seeing where they go from here and what cash does will be important to watch moving into the new year.
All right, Kenan, lots of great information today. For anyone who would like to get in touch for more marketing information from the team, how can they do that?
Yeah, just check us out on the web at eggmarket.net.
All right, Kenan, thanks again for the analysis. As always, thanks for a great 2025, and we will talk to you next year.
Happy New Year, Riley. Bye.
Thanks again to Kenan Layden of agmarket.net for joining us on today's show. We'll go ahead and take a look at the closing markets through the market window at iowaagnet.com. At the close, March corn down 1/4 cent at 4.40 1/4. January soybeans down 15 3/4 at 10.30 1/2. January soybean meal down 2.20 at 2.9450. Soybean oil down 86 cents at 48.07. Chicago wheat down 3 3/4 at 5.07 even. Minneapolis spring wheat down 4 1/2 at 5.74 even. Kansas City hard red winter wheat down 7 1/4 at 5.14 3/4. March oats down 2 1/4 at 3.02 1/2. On the Merc, February live cattle up $1.12 at 231.60. January feeders up 70 cents at 350.25. February lean hogs down 35 cents at 85.10. February pork cutout went unchanged at 93.75. And January Class 3 milk down 19 cents at 15.23. That's been a check of the markets here on Ag Matters PM. Find all of our daily ag news content online at iowaagnet.com. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network in Des Moines, I'm Riley Smith. On behalf of Mark Magnuson and Dustin Huffman, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.